The revisionist history of hip-hop, dismantling the myth of the supreme rapper. Modern hip-hop culture is currently plagued by a deep-seated historical revisionism. Turn on any contemporary music commentary channel or scroll through internet forums, and you will find an overwhelming narrative stating that the rapper, the lyricist behind the microphone, has always been the supreme centerpiece and foundational engine of the genre. This belief is a complete distortion of history. By elevating the modern MC to an absolute monarch, the mainstream music industry and casual commentators have systematically erased the technical, economic, behavioral, and cultural foundations that hip-hop inherited directly from its true predecessor, the disco movement. To understand how this history was rewritten, one must first examine the technical and economic blueprint established by disco in the late 1960s and early 1970s. For decades, hip-hop was mistakenly credited with pioneering the continuous twin-turntable mixing setup. However, recent historical research and public exposure have finally corrected this timeline, proving that disco club DJs were the ones who actually engineered this framework. Early hip-hop pioneers recognized the brilliance of the twin-turntable infrastructure, never went out of their way to squash the rumor that they invented it, and willingly ran with the myth. Furthermore, the entire economic model of the modern hip-hop stage exists because disco cleared the path. Before the disco era, nightclubs required 5 to 7-piece live bands featuring pianos, horns, drums, and singers to keep an audience moving. Disco completely revolutionized the nightlife economy by proving that a single DJ spinning pre-recorded tracks was exponentially cheaper and more efficient. When you strip away the mainstream corporate wash and look at what remains of modern hip-hop, you are left with just an MC and a DJ. This minimalist setup is not a hip-hop innovation. It is the exact framework that disco culture built from the ground up to maintain the illusion of an isolated, pristine origin story in the Bronx. Gatekeepers intentionally separated early innovators like Grandmaster Flowers and DJ Hollywood from the narrative by labeling them strictly as and quote, disco DJs, and quote. This was a deliberate piece of historical erasure, despite the fact that Hollywood was arguably the very first to rhyme continuously over recorded loops, and early hip-hop records utilized the word and quote, disco and quote, in their titles more than almost any other genre outside of disco itself. This revisionism becomes even more glaring when analyzing the systematic erasure of dance. In the authentic, early days of the culture, the dance was infinitely more important than the lyrics. The music was structurally altered to serve the physical movement on the floor, not the person on the microphone. DJ Kool Herc and other pioneers engineered the looping technique, specifically to extend 30-second drum breaks into 5-minute tracks so that break dancers had the time and space to showcase their skills. The MC and #039's original role was strictly a supporting one. They were party hosts and hype men whose main duty was to shout out the DJ and spotlight the dance crews entering the center of the cipher. The corporate music business, however, could not easily package, broadcast, or sell a breakdancer and #039's physical street movement on a vinyl record or cassette tape, because audio formats were the only viable way to generate global profit. The industry aggressively funded and marketed the MC and #039's voice, pushing dance to the margins. The culture evolved. The mainstream industry began to mirror the exact gatekeeping behaviors of the elite disco clubs it claimed to distance itself from. In the early days, mainstream clubs routinely kicked out break dancers and street hip-hoppers to maintain a controlled, commercial environment. Decades later, the mainstream hip-hop industry did the exact same thing by completely abandoning graffiti and breakdancing, reducing a rich four-element culture back down to a single commercial audio product. Even the dark underbelly of the culture followed this parallel cycle. The devastating systemic drug epidemics that plagued and ultimately dismantled the late-era disco scene were mirrored step for step by the hip-hop industry in subsequent generations. Finally, when modern purists run out of technical or historical defenses, they retreat to the emotional argument that hip-hop created a brand new, rebellious street and attitude, and while this swagger is undeniably powerful, claiming hip-hop invented it is another exercise in historical amnesia. Larger-than-life black cultural icons like Mr. T, Muhammad Ali, and James Brown were walking the earth with the exact same trash-talking bravado, flashing gold chains, and defiant anti-establishment posture long before the first Bronx Park jams ever took place. Hip-hop did not birth this attitude. It inherited it, packaged it, and sold it. Preserving the true history of the culture requires acknowledging that if you strip away the street art and the dancers, hip-hop did not build a new house. It simply moved into the highly profitable technical, behavioral, and economic infrastructure that disco and pre-existing cultural giants had already left behind. 4. Historical accuracy and educational purposes. The teaching of the fifth element of hip-hop will always remain top priority. I have deep dived into the research and assisted the Hip Hop Museum in the presentation of this history, removing it from its mainstream version. An accurate version of the history must be held up for community-based structure. This research was conducted and produced by TRXV Stylards, PJ Vincent.